The horse refused to enter the trailer with a panic so absolute it stopped everyone cold. The kind of full-body refusal that made the metal ramp rattle and the lead rope go tight. And seconds later, when the trailer floor gave way beneath the very spot they'd been trying to load him onto, everyone at Willow Creek Stables understood that the horse had not been being difficult. He had been the only one who knew the danger was already under their feet. The morning had started with the sort of orderly pressure that made mistakes easy. At Willow Creek, show days always did. The stable sat in the low green hills outside Fairhaven, where horse properties spread across old farmland, and every second driveway seemed to have a board fence, a dressage ring, or a rusting trailer parked beside a barn. Willow Creek was not the fanciest place in the county, but it was respected. Good footing, careful management, a reputation for turning out horses that were sane, fit, and willing. Its owner, Dana Keller, liked to say she ran a barn for riders who wanted their horses to come home sound more than they wanted ribbons, though in truth she liked ribbons just fine. On that Saturday, half the barn was preparing for a regional schooling show 40 miles away. Show trunks were packed, saddle pads were lined up like uniforms, braiding kits sat open on tackroom benches, coffee cups multiplied on every flat surface. Grooms moved quickly, riders tried not to look nervous, and somewhere in the aisle someone was always asking where the medical armband, spare girth, or number holder had gone. Nora Ellis had been at Willow Creek long enough to thrive in that kind of controlled chaos. She was 32, the assistant trainer, and had the kind of practical authority that came from years of solving horse problems before they turned into people problems. She knew which horse needed a quiet hand on the lead and which one needed you to act like loading was the least interesting event of the day. She knew which students got themselves worked up and which pretended they weren't scared until the last minute. And she knew, better than most, that horses were not machines. They reacted to things humans missed: subtle vibrations, shifting balance, strange smells, changes in footing. Most of the time, people called those reactions bad behavior because it was easier than admitting the animal might be perceiving something real. That morning, the horse in question was a bay gelding named Alder. Alder was not, by any definition, a problem horse. He was 9 years old, warm blood cross, dark bay with a white star and one sock, owned by 16-year-old Sophie Mercer, who loved him with the fierce, anxious devotion only teenage riders and certain kinds of grown men reserved for animals that carried their hearts around in plain sight. Alder was steady, smart, and usually the sort of horse who loaded into a trailer like he was stepping into a familiar room. He had been hauled to lessons, clinics, trail rides, and half a dozen schooling shows in the same trailer without drama, which was why, when he planted his feet at the base of the ramp and refused to move, Nora paid attention immediately. The trailer belonged to Dana. It was a 4-horse slant load with a dressing room up front, painted white once, but now mostly the color of dust in use. It was older, but well-maintained, or as well-maintained as anyone believed. Dana kept the tires fresh, checked the brakes, replaced rotten mats when she saw them. The trailer had been with the barn for years, and people trusted it the way they trusted old things that had survived long enough to feel permanent. Nora led Alder toward it just after 6:40 a.m. The dawn chill was lifting, mist still caught low around the paddocks. The gravel lot beside the indoor arena hummed with trailer loading energy. Another boarder tightening chest bars on her own rig, a father carrying a hay net too full, a pony shrilling from inside the first trailer loaded for the day. Alder walked calmly until they reached the ramp. Then he stopped so abruptly Nora nearly walked into his shoulder. "Come on," she said lightly, not yet concerned. She gave the lead rope a soft forward feel. Alder raised his head, nostrils widening, ears snapping forward and back. He leaned backward just enough to say no. Sophie, already in breeches and half-zip boots, frowned from beside the fender. "That's weird. Maybe the pony screaming in there isn't helping," Nora said, still easy. She let Alder stand for a few seconds, then asked again. Same response. Head up, feet planted, muscles hardening under the skin of his neck. No pawing, no rearing, no wild spinning, just refusal. Dana came over carrying a clipboard and one glove. "What's taking so long?" "He's saying no," Nora said. Dana glanced at Alder, then at the open trailer. "He loaded into this rig last month." "I know." Alder lowered his nose toward the ramp, sniffed once, and jerked his head back as if the smell offended him. Nora felt the first flicker of unease. A horse that balks at loading can be reacting to many things: claustrophobia, previous bad experience, tension from the handler, bees in the trailer, shadows, footing changes, another horse making noise. Good horse people learn not to make assumptions too fast. Still, Nora knew Alder. This felt different. Not fear of being trapped, more like refusal to step onto something specific. "Back him up," Dana said. "Reapproach." Nora did. Alder backed politely, circled, came forward again, and stopped in the exact same place. Front toes just shy of the aluminum edge strip where the rubber ramp mat began. This time his whole body quivered once. His eyes showed white at the corners for only a second. Sophie's face tightened. "He never does that." "Breathe," Nora told her. "Let me think." Behind them, another horse loaded into another trailer with a hollow clatter and no fuss. The contrast made Alder's refusal look more dramatic than it already was. Dana walked up the ramp herself and stepped into the trailer, testing the footing with her boots. "Feels fine." Nora did not like hearing that. Human boots and horse weight were not the same. Still, Dana was right that nothing obvious was wrong. The mats looked flat. The ramp hinge wasn't twisted. No bees. No sharp smell of urine rot or mold. Just the familiar rubber metal odor of any horse trailer in summer. Alder snorted hard and tried to back away farther. Nora let him. "Okay, don't fight him." Sophie touched Alder's neck. "Buddy, what is it?" He kept staring at the ramp. Around them, the morning kept moving. Time pressure thickened the air. Show warm-up slots, classes, hauling schedules, all of it whispering the same human temptation. Just get him on. A different trainer might have escalated then, used a whip behind him, added pressure, made the horse's choices smaller until forward felt like the only answer. Plenty of people would have called it a training moment. Nora didn't. "Open the side escape door," she said instead. Dana shot her a look. "For what?" "I want more light in there." Dana sighed but did it. More daylight spilled into the trailer interior, striping the mats and breast bars. Alder looked, breathed fast, and still did not move. Nora crouched and put a hand on the ramp edge. Solid enough. She pressed on the rubber. No obvious give. She ran her fingers under the side lip. Dry. No rot visible from there. "Try grain?" Sophie offered weakly. Nora almost said no, then changed her mind. Sometimes offering a horse the chance to choose told you more than pressure did. She took a small scoop from the feed room bucket nearby and rattled it softly inside the front stall. Alder's ears flicked toward the sound. He took one step forward. Sophie smiled in relief. "See?" Alder placed one front hoof on the ramp and froze. Every muscle in his body locked so hard Nora felt it through the lead rope. Then he snatched the hoof back off the ramp and flung his head up, eyes wide, nostrils blowing. It was not disobedience. It was recoil. Nora's scalp prickled. "Everybody back up." Dana frowned. "From what?" "Just do it." Something in Nora's tone carried enough authority that even Dana obeyed without argument. Sophie backed Alder 3 full strides away from the trailer. Nora handed the lead rope to her and walked toward the ramp alone. She did not yet know what she expected to find. Maybe a hornet nest tucked up under the side lip. Maybe a sharp screw through the rubber. Maybe nothing visible at all, which would have been worst for the schedule and easiest for the ego. Instead, as she stepped onto the lower half of the ramp, she felt a faint shift beneath her weight. Not the normal spring of a hinged trailer ramp. A softer, wronger movement, like something underneath had hollowed slightly. She stopped. "Dana," she said without turning around, "when did this trailer last get fully checked underneath?" Dana's answer came too fast. "At the start of the season." "That wasn't the question." Silence. Then, "I had the brakes and lights checked." Nora's stomach dropped. Brakes and lights were not floorboards. She crouched and pressed harder with one palm on the rear corner of the ramp, where it met the trailer floor. The rubber mat flexed. Too much. Alder screamed. It was a short, explosive horse scream, the sound they make when panic cuts through training and expectation. Sophie gasped and tightened the lead. Alder threw his weight backward, dragging her half a step, and then the floor gave way. Not the whole trailer, Not an instant cinematic collapse. The rear right loading section, the exact area where a horse's front feet would land after stepping off the ramp into the trailer, splintered downward with a violent crack. The rubber mat dropped. Rotten plywood and rusted cross supports snapped beneath the weight shift of Nora's crouching position and the weakened frame line underneath. One corner of the floor punched clean through, creating a jagged, dark hole wide enough to swallow a horse's leg to the shoulder. Nora leapt backward onto the ramp by instinct more than thought. The trailer lurched. Dust and fragments of rotten wood burst upward in a cloud. Sophie screamed. Alder flew backward, nearly sitting on his haunches, lead rope burning through her hands. He would have run if he hadn't already reached the end of the line, and if Sophie hadn't somehow, miraculously, stayed on her feet. For one long second, nobody moved. Then Dana said very quietly, "Oh my God." The right rear quarter of the trailer now sagged visibly. Through the hole, Nora could see rusted steel support that had thinned almost to lace beneath moisture trapped under the matting. Years of urine, wash water, and neglect in a seam no one lifted often enough had rotted the subfloor from the inside out. If Alder had obeyed and stepped forward fully, his weight would have gone straight through. Best case, catastrophic leg injury. Worst case, a panicked horse half fallen through a trailer floor, thrashing, bleeding, possibly breaking itself and anyone near enough to try to help. Sophie's face had gone white under the early morning color in her cheeks. She wrapped both arms around Alder's neck, shaking so hard Nora thought she might faint. "He knew," she whispered. Nora was breathing too fast herself to answer immediately. Dana stepped closer to the trailer, then stopped, as if the thing had become dangerous to approach on a human scale too. I didn't know." No one accused her, not in that first minute. Shock came first. Anger had to wait for oxygen. A boarder from 2 trailers over hurried over, looked once, and swore. Another called to ask if anyone was hurt. A father hustled his child farther away. The morning that had felt merely busy 10 seconds earlier now carried the electrical edge of narrowly missed catastrophe. Nora put a hand up. "Nobody goes near this rig. Nobody loads anything until every trailer here gets checked." Dana blinked at her. "Nora, no." Nora's voice came harder now because fear was turning into clarity. "No horse steps into any trailer on this property until we inspect floors. All of them. Mats up. Every one." That landed like a command because it was one, whether Dana liked it or not. The next hour became a strange combination of emergency response and reckoning. There was no 911 call because no one had been physically injured. But there was first aid for rope burn on Sophie's hand, ice packs for the bruise blooming on Nora's shin where she had hit the ramp edge, and a whole line of boarders standing in the gravel lot staring at their own trailers as if seeing them for the first time. Dinah, to her credit, did not argue after the first minute of stunned guilt. She pulled every spare tool she owned from the barn workshop, crowbars, socket wrenches, utility knives, and they started lifting mats. The findings got uglier fast. One trailer was sound. One had minor corrosion but no structural danger. A third, borrowed by a lesson mom who thought hose it out when it smells counted as maintenance, had soft spots near the side wall that made everyone go quiet. Another had damp rot under a front mat where a hay bag had leaked water for who knew how long. The culture of assumed safety cracked open in that lot under the same sun that had started the day like any other. By 9:30, the show plan was abandoned. Nobody went anywhere. The farrier, who had come by for an unrelated appointment, crawled under one trailer and emerged swearing about rust. 2 mechanics from town were called. The barn group chat exploded. Parents were informed. Riders cried over missed classes, then cried harder when they grasped what had almost happened. Sophie stayed near Alder the whole time. He had settled once the trailer was moved out of sight, but every now and then he lifted his head toward the lot and blew sharply through his nose, as if he still remembered the exact smell of the danger. He was not a mystical horse. He was not psychic. He was an animal with prey instincts sharp enough to register instability under one hoof, where humans saw only a scheduled delay. By midday, Dana sat on an overturned bucket with her face in her hands for a full minute before speaking to Nora. "I should have pulled those mats months ago," she said. Nora, still riding the shaky aftercurrent of adrenaline, did not soften the truth. "Yes," Dana nodded once. accepting the blow because it was deserved. I thought the annual service covered enough. It covered brakes and lights, Nora said. Not what horses stand on. A horse trailer floor is one of those things people trust by habit because they need to. Once hauling becomes routine, the floor becomes invisible. Rubber over wood or aluminum, swept, hosed, loaded, unloaded. But beneath mats, damage breeds in silence. Moisture sits, urine works into seams. Rust blooms under cross members. Rot spreads from edges inward. And because most days nothing visibly collapses, people go on believing looks fine is a form of inspection. Willow Creek stopped believing that by lunchtime. Nora spent part of the afternoon helping Dana draft a mandatory trailer safety policy for the barn. Quarterly mat removal and floor checks, annual undercarriage inspection by a qualified trailer mechanic, immediate retirement of rigs with soft spots, and no horse to be loaded by pressure if it hesitated unusually at the ramp until footing and environment were rechecked. She wrote it in clean, practical language because practical language changed habits better than blame. Still, privately, what stayed with her was Alder's face when his hoof touched the ramp. The instant recoil, the absolute conviction in his body that forward was wrong. Later that evening, after the lot was quiet and the canceled show clothes had been put away, Sophie came to find Nora in the feed room. "Do you think he really knew?" she asked. Nora leaned against the grain bin and considered the question with the respect it deserved. "I think he felt something," she said. "Maybe movement, maybe hollow vibration, maybe a smell we couldn't catch. Horses notice footing first. That's one of the ways they stay alive." Sophie looked down at the lead rope burn on her palm. "I thought he was being difficult for like 15 seconds. "So did everyone," Nora said. That was the part worth remembering. Not that the horse was special in some supernatural way. Not that humans were stupid. Just that pressure and routine make people interpret warnings as inconvenience until the floor actually breaks. Alder got carrots that night and an extra long grooming session, and from Dana, an apology spoken directly into his soft bay neck, while no one else pretended not to listen. He accepted it in the way horses accept everything. By existing on the other side of your guilt with no interest in your inner life, as long as you stop making dangerous decisions around them. In the weeks that followed, word spread well beyond Willow Creek. Farriers mentioned it. Feed stores repeated it. Trainers sent photos of lifted mats in group chats with captions that were only half joking. One near disaster in one gravel lot became a traveling warning because horse people, for all their flaws, understand catastrophe prevention when they see the shape of it clearly enough. And every time Nora watched a horse hesitate at a ramp after that, she did not start by thinking training problem. She started by thinking, what does the horse know that I haven't checked yet? Because on one ordinary show morning, a horse refused to enter a trailer, and seconds later the floor gave way beneath the exact place everyone had expected him to step. That was not stubbornness. That was survival.